All right, welcome to the Unnamed Cybersecurity Podcast. We have a special guest. I'm in a special location. Matt is too. He looks like he's actually in the airplane right now, but he's not.
I'm in the cockpit. I'm flying this thing.
Yeah, we don't trust Matt to fly, so we're going to leave that alone. We have a special guest with us, Nick. Nick is from a company, Total. Say hi, Nick.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Nick.
I was hoping he was going to say hi, Nick. So Nick is joining us today because he is an expert in responding to basically cyber incidents, right? That's would that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do it every day here.
So we want to talk about McLaren Health today. They're a large hospital in Michigan. They have 13 locations. They actually do health insurance as well. And they, outside of Michigan, I think they cover Indiana and Ohio a little bit for that. And for the second time in 2 years, they've been hit with a cyber attack. Last year, LV or Black Hat hit them and exfiltrated, I think like 2 terabytes of data. It affected 2.5 million people. And they just had started sending out the notifications of those people getting their data lost when they got hit with ransomware again a week ago or last week, and they're still down. People can't get cancer treatments. They can't get their labs. They can't even get anything. Like getting a drug takes hours because they have to do all this by hand. So what we want to talk about today is like, what does that look like for your business? And what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that, at least hopefully make sure that this doesn't happen to you? But if you do get hit with ransomware, what are the things that we can do to make sure that we limit that impact so that your business isn't completely different? Because these people that go to McLaren, and this is terrible. And this is all over the state of Michigan right now.
Wow. So lightning does strike twice, huh?
Yeah, apparently they didn't shore up their defenses before in that year since they got hit before. So Nick, what do you think is what do you think is maybe like the top 2 or 3 things that a small business can really do to kind of minimize the risk of ransomware taking their business down completely?
Yeah, well, I want to start by talking about small businesses. Anyone can be impacted by ransomware. I've seen even a 3-person construction company targeted with one of the most complicated strains of ransomware I've seen. So it doesn't matter the size of business, even if you are a large hospital chain or if you're a small construction company without HIPAA information, you can still be targeted. I think the first thing to think about is, what are you defending against? In something like a hospital, you're really protecting your data, your customer data, because that's HIPAA information, that's sensitive data that even if your systems don't get ransomware, and if the data gets out, you're still dealing with double extortion ransomware. Which this would be a good time to cover different types of ransomware. Single extortion is encrypting your data and loss of business. Double extortion is encrypting and stealing data and then threatening the company with releasing the data. That's the most common we see nowadays. And then triple extortion is encrypting the data, stealing the data, threatening the company, but then also grabbing that data and sending it to the end users whose data belongs to them and saying, hey, this company lost your data. What are you going to do to keep it from getting out? So in order to protect against those, the first single extortion ransomware is endpoint detection, SIM, keeping an eye on your devices and having preventions in place. So even if there is a weak link, even if someone downloads a strain, it can prevent it before it gets out of hand. Preventions against lateral movement is a really good one of those. Ransomware is only really effective if it gets through the whole network. Double extortion, you want to keep an eye on data exfiltration. So a lot of that is securing your shared drives, locking down your network, restricting permissions and access to various types of data. So that way, a front desk user who's checking patients in can't access the same patient data that, let's say, their primary care provider would. Making sure that you have those walls up in place so it can't get out of control like these guys did. And then those same protections can apply to triple extortion as well.
Does it ever amaze you how companies can just have like 6 terabytes of information exfiltrated and they don't notice that it's happening?
It amazes me, but there's a lot of ways to do it completely under the radar.
Yeah.
For example, exfiltration over I'm forgetting it. Exfiltration. You can get a DNS request and exfiltrate data over DNS. It takes a very long time,
Yeah.
but you can fly under the radar with that.
53
and
bytes at a time.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a very long time, but that's going to get around firewalls. It's going to evade a lot of primary detections. If you have a SOC service that's not looking for these spikes in activity, it can evade that as well. So there's a lot of ways to exfiltrate data completely under the radar, rather than just grabbing a flash drive running out sort of thing.
Well, what's interesting was Change Healthcare. I think it was 6 terabytes. It was only like 9 days.
Wow, that is impressive. That's
so
than most internet speeds.
Dude, they just
That one
they
wasn't
just,
DNS.
Yeah, they didn't do the quiet approach. They just said, you know what, we're just going to try the loud approach, and we're going to see if we get stopped. And they just didn't
put a
stop.
vacuum in.
Yeah, but that seems to be a major problem. Is like they don't.
It
They don't
happens
see
all the
the,
time, Chris. I actually got a call years ago. I got a call from a. We actually got a letter from the movie companies because one of the sites had become a primary download site for a movie that was coming out, because they had just upgraded to gigabit internet, and somebody decided they were going to download that movie with a peer-to-peer tool, and then they became the site. Pretty good when the movie companies come knocking at the door too.
Yeah, I mean, you also expose the business too to being
Absolutely.
sued for that'd be like a DMCA thing. But what about? So Nick, what about from an endpoint? You talked about a little bit about endpoint protection, EDR. When you talk about lateral movement, we need to break this down a little bit more for an audience that's like business owners and things like that. So you want to break down lateral movement in just like fifth grader terms?
Sure. I'm in an office right now. I have computers to the left and the right of me. And in a typical office space, you're in a local network. You have one public IP address that reaches out to the public network. So it doesn't matter if I'm on this computer right here or if I'm on my computer I'm on right now, they're still going to be reaching out through the same public IP address. Now, all these computers talk to each other. They send data to each other in a typical office space network. Lateral movement is once you entrance that network, once you get in that public IP, you get past the firewall, then you can move around to the devices internally. A lot of them, they can share user accounts, so you can get the same user, move through devices. Some of them share credentials. Some of them have files. So let's say my computer has access to a file server that's also on this local network. I don't have to access the file server directly. I can access it through my computer. So it's once you get that initial access, being able to expand throughout the internal network.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's pretty much how households work too. So if your kids decide that they want to download a bunch of stuff, maybe watch your kids.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, what about backups with ransomware? Do you guys see a lot of backups being destroyed as well?
Yes.
Is that one
so
service?
Primary one, volume shadow copies. That's your Windows backup built in the Windows operating system. It's very easy. It takes one command to destroy all of your Windows backups and your volume shadow copies. So that's one of the primary indicators. And sometimes they won't even delete them. Sometimes they'll just shrink the storage space to 1%. So that way none of the backups are actually useful, and you can evade detections for deletion that way. So you have to get creative with how you're looking at deleting the volume shadow copies. But destroying backups, I would say, is much less common than it used to be. Because right now destroying backups is really just trying to cover footsteps, because most of the information I see is double extortion. It's when they steal the data, and rather than ransoming the devices, encrypting the devices, these devices have EDR on them. You aren't gonna be able to fully ransom them that easily. So I would actually say it's very difficult to fully ransom them. But it's much easier to steal the data and then hold the data above the customer's head and say, you have to pay us for us not to release this data. So destroying backups, I don't see too much. Big one to bring up, though, is ransom cloud activity. So that's SharePoint and OneDrive. SharePoint and OneDrive has a limited amount of overwrites and ways that you can revert a file. and I forget what the exact number is, but what threat actors will do is they'll go into the SharePoint, they'll download all the content, and then they'll overwrite that SharePoint 1,000 times. And once they overwrite it 1,000 times, none of those files can be reverted back to their original state. And you expect SharePoint to have backups of your files. You don't expect to back up your SharePoint that is a backup of other files. So ransom cloud is a big threat right now as well. And you have to make sure to detect that.
Do you see that in Google Workspace too? Does that have a similar flaw that
I
could
have
happen?
I have not seen it with Google Workspace, but I'm sure the same technique can be applied there.
It's a good thing about because a lot of people in cloud, they don't think about backing up their cloud.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe.
That's the whole, it's supposed to be safe.
Yeah, but I mean, we know the statistics. This is not 80th percentile. Most hacks, most breaches are coming through the cloud.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's step away from ransomware for a second. What is the number one attack that you guys see against a business? Let's say you're doing SIM, so they're collecting all the logs and everything. Like, what's probably the number one attack that you see?
So we monitor a lot of endpoints here at Total, and we monitor a lot of Office 365 users. And I would say probably for every single endpoint compromise, I mean true compromise, like someone remotely logging in, messing around on the computer, for every single endpoint compromise, I probably see 50 to 100 business email compromises. That is by far the overwhelming majority of attacks, and there's a lot of ways to gain access to that, and there's a lot of ways to prevent it. But some
Nick,
people.
what do you see as for your email attacks? What are you seeing as the number one way, or the number one methodology that these guys are going through? Are they using sophisticated tools? Are they using, how are they doing about it?
Overall, phishing, sending out a link saying, "Hey, these are the promotions for 2025. Access this file," and you want to see if you're on that list. So you click that link, and it says, in order to access this file, you have to log into Microsoft. Since you're in a rush to see how much you're getting promoted and your pay raised, you don't look at the URL and see that it's actually a fake Microsoft logon page. Enter in your credentials, and then those credentials are typically saved for a little bit later for when someone physically or virtually, I suppose, but accesses that mailbox and then starts performing actions. And I could get into the actions part too if you want to talk about those.
I think we might give heart attacks out if we keep going deeper on the actions part. Like, we might scare people into that
Yeah,
just a little bit, right?
So what
That one.
I'm sorry, Chris, but I want to get back to one thing that Nick said. Nick, if you had to pick something, especially with the email compromise, what would be the number one thing that businesses should be doing to harden their email?
Multi-factor authentication. It's being someone that can see both sides. I can see customers that have MFA and customers that don't. And it is a massive difference in the amount of compromises. It's very effective.
Matt, you're supposed to turn MFA on, dude. You can't use the same password everywhere. You do realize that, right?
It's really disappointing. Is that why I keep getting hacked?
Probably.
Matt, your password has been Chris Burns.
Is awesome. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Let's keep it that way. Let's not go anywhere else with that. So,
Exclamation point.
Nick, do you have anything else, like tips or something that you want to kind of say? Or
Yeah, keep an eye on your employees' inbox rules. That's the main indicator. It's a very obvious catch-all. What the threat actors will primarily do is they're going to keep an eye on the emails and watch the conversations. And then when the conversation is talking about billing at some point, that construction company is a great example. They're going to send over an invoice. Construction companies pay a ton of invoices. They build a forwarding rule to just put it to the RSS feeds folder on your Outlook. Everyone has an RSS feeds folder. Probably most people don't know that there's an RSS feeds folder there, and that's why threat actors use it. So they forward the legitimate email over there. They scrape it. They change the bank account routing numbers, the PayPal address, wherever the invoice is going, and then they send it from a spoofed email address that's just maybe a little bit different than the original one. And then that way, it's within that 5-minute window. The customer can even call the construction company and say, hey, did you just send me this email? They're like, yeah, I did. You're good to send it. And then they send the money, and we see some very large amounts of funds being stolen just with that simple tactic. So keep an eye on inbox rules.
I know we monitor the inbox rules, and it's funny because for some reason we have a lot of users who just create inbox rules, but we get the alert, and then we have to look at it and everything like that. But there's one person one day made like 25 inbox rules, and it wasn't an attack. They just literally got bored one day and wanted to put all their mail into folders. And it was just like ticket, case, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So, but
I'm that user.
Yeah, are you?
I probably have like 30 or 40 of them.
Oh man, that's funny. But yeah, it was funny because we see all the cases, we see all the alerts and stuff like that. But to your point, that's what we see. We see too the same thing. BC seems to be the thing that just gets everybody. Like even the ones that are bypassing MFA at this point, like the adversary in the middle attacks. Like we're seeing a lot more of those recently. It's been like a big uptick.
Yeah, I'm seeing a ton of those too.
So I was gonna say, for everybody out there, adversary in the middle is the page that Nick talked about that you can go to log into. It's really it's running through, let's just say, another server, and when you type your credentials in there, it steals your credentials. But then when you put your MFA in, it then steals the session token on the way back, and then they can use that to log into your accounts. This is basically the premise of that, and it does so they could be anywhere in the world and just log into your account. And that's mostly what we've seen for phishing lately anyway. It's been a little bit more sophisticated like that. So you got to keep an eye out on that. Train users, I would think, would probably be something you'd want to.
Yeah, train users and run fake phishing attacks. Test them. Train your users, see if the training stuck. Over here at Total, we're a security company, and we still run internal phishing attacks on our employees. And it's a really good litmus test, making sure the training did stick and it did work. You can tell if the training worked pretty clearly by running a phishing attack test before and then after.
I can tell you how to seriously take security, because I'm at the same building right now. I'm at Total, and I walked in. I got buzzed into the door. I walked in, and we were trying to get the elevator. You can't use the elevator without badging in, and then you turn around and realize you shut the door and you can't get out without badging out. So we were sweating a little bit because we were waiting for Jeff to come down and get us, and that was a little sweat time. So they take physical security here is on point, guys, on point.
Yeah, it takes 3 badges to get to my desk. Not a bad thing, unless you're carrying 2 plates of food or something, but it's worth it.
That's true. So Nick, thank you, man. Thank you.
Yes.
This is awesome. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to close on?
Nah, just confirm. Nick's just confirming everything we've been telling people. It's like, compromises are the number one way people are getting hacked, and people just still need to learn it. MFA is not optional anymore.
Yeah.
Ask McLaren and their failed duo rollout. Apparently, I probably should have said that, but I'll keep more. I'll keep on top of that as more information comes out. The one thing I want to kind of end with on that note is Michigan doesn't have a breach notification law, and I'm going to try to figure out how we can force that to change, because there is no notifications. There's been so much silence in this, and people don't know what's happening with their data, and it's sad that there's no force.
It's a shame. The crazy part, Chris, is everybody who's outside of Michigan who has an outside Michigan address will be notified because their states have breach notification laws.
I love Maine's breach notification thing. You can just go there and see every letter that's sent out. You can see it verbatim. So I never thought I'd say this in life, but they need to copy Maine. Of all states, Maine would be the one. Maine, I think Maryland's going pretty robust too.
Vacation Land USA, Maine.
Yeah, there you go. So, Nick, again, thank you for joining us. Hey, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Stay cyber safe, and we'll talk to you next week.